Chairman of the Board and Founding President of Reichman University, Professor Uriel Reichman, President of Reichman University, Professor Rafi Melnick, and, well, the head of the ISA is not here yet, but he's written here, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the ICT, Mr. Shabtai Shavit, Mayor of Herzliya, Mr. Moshe Fadlon, Deans, Vice Presidents, and the ICT family. That's what we have here in this conference, the 21st conference that I am delighted to be opening together with the rest of the speakers. This conference is very special. It's unique because of its timing, because of its length, because of its participants, and its location. A little bit about the time. First of all, I hesitate to say this, but I don't want to say it's the end of COVID, but certainly we feel we're part of COVID remission that are allowing us to have an in-person conference. And I demanded to have all speakers, almost all speakers who want to and can speak, to come here and speak in person, because we really must go back to functioning directly rather than indirectly. And the uniqueness of this time, which was mentioned, of course, by Professor Reichman, is that we are just before an election campaign in Israel, and this is a very sensitive and important time. And I would also like to make note of another point that makes the timing of this conference ever so important, and that is, are we not going to sign, or will the nuclear agreement with Iran will or will not be signed? I will bet that it will, but even if I am wrong, either way, either alternative will have great implications on the upcoming months and probably years. The length of this, or the duration of this conference, it is 5 days long, 3 days, full days and 2 half days, and the aim of it is to allow, beyond hearing lectures and presentations from really the greatest decision makers and speakers around the world and experts, is also to allow you to mingle. The mingling is very important, networking is very important, and we really thought very hard how to allow people during these 5 days to get to know one another and to really realize the slogan of the ICT, which is, it takes a network to beat a network, and you are all part of this network. The participants, we have over 140 participants. I didn't tell you, Professor Reichman, you said 130, but what can I do? It grew over the last 24 hours. We have more than 140 speakers from around the world. We have delegations here from various countries, and as has been said, and I will not repeat it, the entire top echelon of the Israeli security enterprise will be speaking here, and these will be very important addresses with very interesting content, which is important for us to hear. So in terms of content, of course, we can simply take a glance at the list of presentations and panels. It encompasses all the important matters for experts here and also in the other halls. But I would like to continue what has been said by Professor Melnick, and that is this point in time, the transformation that the world is facing, where all the aspects of this transformation have and will have implications on the world of terrorism. I would like to make note in the global arena 4 trends that are concentric, that interweave with one another. The first, as I've mentioned, is the signing of the nuclear agreement with Iran. If it will be signed, then we're talking about a situation where terror organizations, militias, and other proxies of various kinds of Iran will receive aid and budget that have been unprecedented in recent decades or ever in terms of its scope. And if you don't think that it's going to impact the world of terrorism, of course it will. And if the agreement will not be signed, a conflict between Iran and those who view it becoming a nuclear state very negatively, and there can be a whole list there, perhaps Israel is heading it, but it's not the only one, this conflict is inevitable and will also have implications on warfare that is not conventional warfare, that is sub-conventional insurgency, guerrilla, terrorism, etc. The inter-superpower tension, I think that is an issue that was also mentioned. We are currently in a process of going from a bipolar to a multipolar world. We used to have an American hegemony, and the Americans would dictate what the direction would be, everyone would be going in. And now we have two other great powers that have different agendas: Russia and the war in Ukraine, which does and will have implications for terror, use of proxies, use of foreign fighters, use of fake news by all parties involved. These will have implications for the world of terror that we are engaging in. China, the rising giant, the emerging giant that is energetically dependent upon Iran, that has great growing tension with the West, particularly with the United States, sort of with Taiwan, for instance, and has a policy of the Belt and Road that means that China's interest in the Middle East, among others, and also its involvement here is greater. And we also have the United States with the Biden administration, which is different from the previous administration, to say the least, and with a policy that is interesting in its content world in terms of the counter-terrorism, if we can judge by these last 12 months. Some might say they are being separatist, they are coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, but on the other hand, they are also very active. They are active surgically in targeted killings. And we cannot overlook that. They have made great achievements within a short time frame vis-a-vis Al-Qaeda and vis-a-vis ISIS. And if I had to translate that, it's from boots on the ground to sandals on the ground. And another process that I have not seen too many people addressing, and I'm very concerned about that, which connects us again to Iran. You must recall that recently the United States has assassinated the head of Al-Qaeda, the one who replaced Bin Laden and al-Zawahiri, and those who are at the two ends of replacing al-Zawahiri. There are two people that over the last decade have had a tight connection, were living in Iran. Now just imagine the situation if one of them were to be appointed as head of Al-Qaeda, then the IRGC and other Iranian parties will be able to impact and perhaps even to operate not only Shiite militia groups and terror organizations, but global Sunni extreme groups through Al-Qaeda. That is a phenomenon that will be fascinating if it'll happen. And the final process that is taking place in the international arena connects to what we've heard from Professor Reichman, and that is the strengthening of the extreme right elements in various countries and use of violence and terror. It's not a new phenomenon, but it certainly is a trend, the trajectory of which is very clear. It is negative, it is problematic, and this problematic aspect is also shown in the fact that the right-wing, the extreme terror right-wing elements are claiming to represent the majority, and they claim to defend the interests of the majority. Most terrorists say that they only defend the interests of the of minorities, but on the far right terrorism. So if these people pretend that they are actually representing the majority, it is much harder to address them, and they are much more dangerous. In our arena, domestically, we can also talk about 4 areas of action, and all of these aspects will be discussed in panels, presentations, and by speakers, as well as the 4 arenas with which Israel is grappling. The first is Iran, Iran's foothold in Syria, its attempt to hone and to make its rockets and weapons and Hezbollah's rockets and weapons more precise, using Syria to go into Lebanon and operating Shiite militia groups by Iran, first and foremost Hezbollah. The northern arena, we will certainly discuss it in the next few days, a possible conflict with Hezbollah that we are facing. We were never closer to a possible conflict with Hezbollah, at least if we were to analyze the rhetoric of Nasrallah in the context of the Israel of the EZ and the Karish rig, which will be activated. The southern arena, after Operation Breaking Dawn, the different forces and the different balance of powers, and Israel is currently heading a kind of quiet, a relative quiet in the southern arena, but the tension between that and the demand and the basic right of Israel to demand that the POWs and MIAs be returned, and they're being kept by Hamas in a way that is not humanitarian. And the central arena, we see growing tension as we speak in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. I believe we will soon hear the head of the ISA speak about this. But for a long time now, we have not been in such great tension as we are now in this arena with the West Bank. And I haven't even mentioned the possible demise of the head of the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen, and the fauda that will develop after that. So all of these topics will be discussed in this conference over the next 5 days. So we have over 140 speakers, and their characteristics is that they are decision makers, they are heads of defense enterprises, and they are also academic experts. And that is why this conference is so unique, because we combine not only the ivory tower of the academia, there will be theories, we will be hearing terrorism or counter-terrorism theories, but it will all be combined with actual action taken against terrorism. And therefore I would like to greet and welcome all of the many guests, hundreds, who have come here from everywhere around the world, different countries around the world, and I would like to wish us all a fruitful and enjoyable conference. Thank you very much.